We are already looking ahead to the 2026 fantasy season because we just cannot wait for more drafts and more fantasy. What better time, though, Ed, to start thinking of some of our off-season fantasy talking points? We'll be talking about through the whole of the off-season. We may as well get stuck straight into them. My first one is the curse of the RB1. And to be honest, this is something that's been on your radar for the last couple of years. And there's a lot of data to back it up. Every single year, we say don't draft last year's best team. Every year, Ed, what do people do?
They draft last year's best team.
So we are expecting CMC to be very high on people's draft boards. I just want to exercise a little bit of caution with that. So, Ed, I've gone back to 2019. The reason I went back to 2019 is because that is as far back as the data on this sleeper app will go for me. And that was my easiest place to find some data. In 2019, the RB1 was CMC. The following year, he was the RB53. 2020, the RB1 on the season was Alvin Kamara. The next season was the RB8. Now, that's as good as it gets. And it doesn't sound catastrophic, but it didn't justify a top 1, 2, or 3 pick when it came to your fantasy drafts. You're looking latter end of the second, aren't you, really, at that sort of range? 2021, it was Jonathan Taylor. Following year, RB33. 2022, Austin Eckler. Following year, RB26. 2023, it was CMC again. We all know what happened that following year. He was the RB68. And last year, 2024, was Saquon Barkley, who finished this year RB14. So there's loads of factors for that. Firstly, teams change things up. You look at Saquon, the schedule for the Eagles against rush defenses was perfect that year for Saquon. Was a little bit tougher this year. Very different situation for the Eagles as well. But you also look at the volume those players have had in those stellar seasons. And just from a human being and biomechanics point of view, that isn't sustainable year on year. What are we expecting from CMC next year then, Ed? Is he going to be the first to book that trend, or are we going to have a down year, do you think?
Well, I think the fascinating thing about CMC this year is that, the majority, I might be wrong here, but I would argue the majority of his points have come in the receiving game. He's been heavily involved in the receiving game. So I suppose that's beneficial in terms that he's probably not as banged up as he may have been in previous years.
Yeah, fair point.
So hopefully he'll be good to go again next year. I mean, he is someone with a history of injuries, and that we try not to draft on injuries, but it is something that lurks in the back of your mind. I think it all kind of depends what the Niners do with their receiving core. Do they add to their receiving core? Does that take away some of his receptions? Does that move him more into the run game? There's a lot of questions there with the 49ers. I do fancy CMC to have another good season, but I don't think he'll be RB1 next year. I think there are a couple of others who are, more appealing.
And I'm going to call my shot very, very early. My RB1 for 2026. For me, Bijan Robinson is a stronger pick as any. So looking at this season, he's had, it's just huge numbers. 287 carries, 1,478 yards, 7 rushing touchdowns. You touched on it with CMC. The route to the huge success at running back is the receiving work as well. 103 targets. 79 receptions, 820 receiving yards, and 4 touchdowns. Looking at his route, 2023 was the RB8, 2024 the RB3, this year the RB2. It just makes sense. He needs an RB1 in that start lineup for me. Mm-hmm. He's just got showing no signs of slowing down. Even, let's remember, he's done all of this with Mike Penix and Kirk Cousins throwing the ball. He's done that with Desmond Ridder in the past throwing the ball. I mean, this is going to lead on to another talking point later on in the show, talking about quarterbacks, but who will the Falcons QB be in 26? Imagine what Bijan would do with a competent signal caller. It just feels like at the minute that the Falcons are wasting Robinson, London, a resurgent Kyle Pitts, and a QB move could make them a really exciting team for fantasy. But say I will come back on that later on. Before we get on to your first talking point, Ed, please do everyone take a moment to subscribe, to like, to give us a share. We have got dynasty content throughout the off-season, some best ball, well, rookie previews. We've got loads coming through the off-season. So stick with us throughout the end of winter, through the spring, and we will look after you through the summer months as we approach football season again. Ed, what is on your radar at the end of this season?
Well, this comes out of our last show where we were looking at and reviewing our rookie picks, and I was quite interested by the receivers, our sophomore receivers. Now, we talk a lot about a sophomore receiver bounce, don't we? They're more often than not, second-year receivers have better seasons, and you have some real breakouts in that season. Now, if we look at our rookie receivers from 2025, there's a couple that stand out. But after that, in terms of making an impact in their rookie year, there's not really many. Now, in the show where we reviewed the receivers, I think we talked about Tet McMillan, who was clearish number one rookie receiver, ended up as wide receiver 16, and looks set to have probably a really solid sophomore season. I think he's in a good situation. He's the clear wide receiver one. The Panthers had a solid season, and we'll look to build on that next season. I'm not sure everyone expected that. So yeah, I mean, him and Bryce Young have worked well together, and I expect him to have a solid sophomore year. So I suppose we're kind of looking beyond him, would you say? Are we in agreement that Tet McMillan probably is going to do what he's done again, potentially?
Yeah, I think when we're looking at the probability, I completely agree with you. You know I like to be a little bit contrary every now and then, but I'm going to go for a different player on your lineup shortly as the one I'd punt for. But yeah, I think actually the sensible pick is Tet.
So behind Tet, you've got Ibuka. Now, of course, he had that ridiculously explosive start to the season. Looked like he was on course for all sorts of ridiculous records, Emeka Ibuka. And I think, if he's fit and firing and dangerous, Baker Mayfield. He's lost that moniker slightly, hasn't he? He's just known as Baker now. But yeah, they had a good relationship, and you'd expect him to come back and I think he would probably break 1,000 yards next season. He was drafted as wide receiver 41 last year, ended up as wide receiver 23. I'm sure he'd be looking to break into the top 20 and emerge as a true wide receiver one in that aging wide receiver room in Tampa Bay. So I think Ibuka is due another solid season. So then you're looking at the ones behind them. So you've got Luther Burden, Jaden Higgins, Elek Ayamana, all had similar-ish seasons. They ended up between wide receiver 48 and 53. I know which one you would go for, and I think I'm in agreement. And I think out of those three, I do fancy Luther Burden to have a bit of a breakout season. If you look at the wide receiver room in Chicago, you've got DJ Moore, you've got Rome Dunze. We weren't sure who was wide receiver one. I still don't think we really are sure. But I do think the Bears made such great strides forward this year. Ultimately, it didn't work out for them in the playoffs, but I think they'll come back strong again next year. Caleb Williams has been excellent this season. Yeah. I've been really impressed with him. And I'm quite excited to see how he and Burden link up next year, because there were signs later in the season that Burden was emerging as a more effective and a more valid fantasy receiver. I'm right, aren't I? You're in you're on the Luther Burden hype train.
No, Ayamana. Yeah, absolutely, Luther Burden. No, Luther Burden, absolutely. And you've already, it's the shift in role later in the season. So we mentioned this on our last show. Weeks 1 to 10, he was averaging 2.6 targets per game. The last 6 games, he was averaging 6.3. So that to me indicates a bit of a shift there. And that was consistent, good volume over the last 6 games. And I just think where Luther Burden is going to go is going to land in the exact point I will not be able to resist picking up loads of him in drafts next year.
And I mean, there's bound to be somebody lower down who will make a big breakout. So Travis Hunter, what happens with him? Does he come back? Does he still try and play both sides of the ball? does he shift towards offense? I'm sure fantasy managers love that because he is a true elite talent when it comes to receiver. You've got Kamara DK, who's done some great punt return work this year. Pat Bryant, Trey Harris. So that there are potentially other breakouts. It's difficult to call beyond that. I don't know if you've got anyone lurking lower down boards who you're keen on.
I'm going to say a player that we omitted from our previous show, and that was because Buccaneers superfan Mark Watson, friend of the show, Mark Watson as well, he popped a reply on our Twitter post for this the other day saying that he hoped we mentioned Tej Johnson. We did not mention Tej Johnson, so I'm going to mention now Tej Johnson. He was a wide receiver 67 on the season. And no, there wasn't any consistency about it. There were a couple of flashes where maybe we do need to give him that a little bit of attention. We saw some inconsistency from Igbuka. What are we going to get from Mike Evans and Godwin moving forward as well? So, yeah, here you go, Mark. Here is your shout out for Tej Johnson.
Well, it's a great point because, where are we with Godwin and Evans? They are aging. I think that their wide receiver one days are probably behind them. So yeah, there's space for someone to step in and make that role their own.
Next up on my radar then, and this is, I suppose, the same every single year, but just feels a little bit more uncertain this year, I must say, and that is looking at the quarterback carousel and some movements we're going to be seeing. So the first port of call this time of season is always, from a fantasy perspective, looking at who is going to be available in our rookie drafts as well. And Mendoza is the man and would appear to be on his way to Vegas. I'm not sure how much that excites me from a fantasy or real life NFL point of view, I'm afraid. Sorry, Raiders fans. But the rookie QB class is thin. The best description I've read so far is that he is the safest option in a thin class.
That's not
the most exciting write-up, is it?
He's not going to put that on his CV, is he?
No, that's like when you're staring at the fridge at 7 a.m. looking for a meal deal at the supermarket and you go, oh, suppose cheese and onion is the best sandwich of a thin class. There's my write-up of Fernando Mendoza. He is like the final remaining cheese and onion sandwich in a chiller. QB's on the move with new head coaches means we're sure to see some shake-up in those rankings. If we were to write up QB rankings for fantasy at this point, that is not going to be the same. So on the move players then that we have. First up, I want to mention Kyler Murray. He looks to have run out of time in Arizona. Can you remember those happy times of hype and expectation for Murray, not just for the NFL, but for fantasy as well? It's really just not happened for him so far. So it looks like we're going to have a fresh start. Is there a landing spot where we might be excited by him? Maybe. I think we will be talking about Kyler Murray because he could land in a spot where we feel there is value to be had, maybe. Mac Jones, for me, he did plenty well enough in Purdy's absence to be in consideration for a starting job somewhere. Malik Willis impressed in Love's absence at the end of the season. Tua, is he finally done in Miami as well? So that's to be considered. Teams who are QB hungry, the Raiders we've already said. The Cardinals likely, say, with Murray on his way out. The Jets, I mean, I've not said about Justin Fields, but he's clearly not the answer to that question there. And the Dolphins, teams that are maybe in the market. The Colts, has Danny Dimes done enough to secure his future there? Riley Leonard doesn't look quite ready yet. The Vikings, I'll mention JJ McCarthy again in a moment. The Falcons, Steelers, after Rodgers plays his usual off-season media attention-seeking game. That's always one of my favourite bits this time of year.
Oh, yeah, we love that.
So there could be some movement with some of those teams. We're always going to get some surprises in there as well. But adding to that, head coach and OC changes. So head coach changes at the Giants, the Browns, the Ravens, the Steelers, the Falcons, the Cardinals, the Dolphins, the Raiders, the Titans. that's the second, third mentions for some of those teams. There's a lot of uncertainty there. OC changes, the Falcons, the Lions, the Chargers, the Raiders, the Eagles, Commanders, the Bucks. The Raiders got a lot of change. I mean, poor Ashton Genty, he's in a whole world of uncertainty this offseason. Of those on the move, who would we say is most interest? I've got a nailed on answer, and I think you might be in agreement with me. We've agreed already once today. Will we agree on this as well? For me, it's Justin Herbert. With McDaniels coming in for the Chargers, a fit O-line. The O-line can't be more injured than it was this year. Year 2 of Amari in Hampton. I think I'm going to have a lot of Justin Herbert next year.
I agree. Herbert, he's got a lot of stick postseason, hasn't he? I saw, can't remember who it was talking about him and how he always seems to find some of his worst games postseason. And it's a fair criticism of him. But he's one of those, I suppose he's one of those quarterbacks I desperately want to do well and have a great season. And I think you're the same. And I wonder whether we try and talk that into existence sometimes. And he's been a solid fantasy quarterback without really being spectacular, bar maybe one season where he had a stellar season. But there are a lot of things in his favour next season, a la Caleb Williams maybe this season. Yeah, I can't argue with that. I think I think it's a great shout about Mac Jones. I think he's earned a chance at a start. I think Jacoby Brissett, is he going to start in Arizona now? You'd expect so. I mean, he was relentless, wasn't he? We joked about it on the show.
Fancy goldmine.
He was absolutely relentless week after week, so consistent. Has he earned a start? And I do think that there's always, quarterback-wise, or there seems to have been over the last few years, a big trade, a big move that will shake the market up. I think that's it is a carousel. Once it gets going, then it can really mix things up. So there's going to be movement, and when things shake down, I think that there's going to be a few quarterbacks who we're going to be more keen on next year.
I glossed over the Vikings earlier, but I don't feel they are 100% confident with JJ McCarthy. We had so much hype pre-season, and it's just not clicked into gear for him. And that has been a huge factor in a player that is your focus for our final off-season talking point.
Indeed. I mean, Justin Jefferson, I don't think anyone is going to disagree with the fact that he is talent-wise probably the best wide receiver in the game. He's certainly up there, isn't he? He's in that wide receiver stratosphere alongside Jamar Chase, arguably. Puka Nakua's moving into that sort of stratosphere as well. But last season is a major concern. If you've got shares in Jefferson in a dynasty league, and in terms of where you're drafting him, I think this year he was wide receiver 2. He was drafted behind Jamar, finished up as wide receiver 21, and he played every single game. Finished with just 2 touchdowns total. We were surprised. I think we mentioned this in a previous show. He did break 1,000 yards, which I was amazed at. But just 84 receptions. Bearing in mind, previous seasons, 2024, wide receiver 2. 2023 was injured, was wide receiver 33, but still got more yards in that season than he did this season. And then 2022, wide receiver 1, monster season. 2021, wide receiver 4. 2020, wide receiver 6. I mean, and he was, well over 100 receptions, close to 200 in those bigger seasons, and averaging kind of like 8, 9, 10 touchdowns a year. So he's come into this season, and let's not forget he was wide receiver 2 last year with your best friend Sam Darnold. There was consistency there, but he managed to make it work with Sam Darnold, who I think it's difficult to argue is just a middle of the road quarterback at best. But this season, yes, there's been that inconsistency. He's had different play callers. He's had different quarterbacks. But to come out as wide receiver 21 is, well, it's a disaster if you drafted him. You drafted him. If you drafted him, he was your number one pick in the first round. You wanted big scores from him every week, and he just wasn't producing those. He had some horrible weeks, picked up a bit towards the end of the season. So next year, where does he go? I mean, you don't want an overreaction. We assume that JJ McCarthy is going to be the starting quarterback and he's going to get a full season. There was a lot of hype and excitement about him this year, and he had some good games, but didn't quite live up to that hype. So where are we drafting Justin Jefferson next season? He's still going top 5, isn't he? No matter what the situation is, he can't have another season like this year, can he?
I think that for me, the key is when you say what the situation is it going to be JJ McCarthy? Is he going to be in Minnesota? He looked so disillusioned at times last season. Is he going to be there? If there is a team that are short of just that last piece and there is a sniff of him maybe considering going out, you throw the house at a trade of that, surely, don't you? If you think you might have a chance at Jefferson and that he could be that last piece of the puzzle. We've seen players force their way out before, haven't we?
Drop him in Buffalo or somewhere like that, you know.
God, no, don't do that.
No, I don't know.
No.
You know, you're going to need a lot of money and a lot of picks to get Jefferson. I doubt the Vikings would want to get rid of him or want to trade him. But you can think of several situations. You drop him in and he could be absolutely explode. But I just worry if he stays in Minnesota. Is he a top 5 wide receiver? And I'm not 100% convinced that he is.
No, he's also a player you could get massive value from, isn't he?
True. If he drops,
it could go the other way.
Overreact.
It could go the other way.
Indeed.
Would that be so? Playing that I can't think of anything. That would be the biggest trade all time, would it? I don't know. I don't remember all of the trades. It's going to feel like it, innit?
Yeah, I mean, certainly non-quarterback wise, I think someone like Jefferson, like I say, I don't think there's any arguing. He talent wise, he's ridiculous, isn't he? And he's one of the best receivers in the game. He's had a bad season. How does he bounce back? That would be an exciting trade.
So, well, we could hope for it. I would much rather be talking about that through the off season than was Aaron Jones going to have another season after being buried in his hole on his retreat?
Do you mean Aaron Rodgers?
Oh, that's Aaron Jones. Oh, don't bury Aaron Jones. No, don't bury Aaron Jones. No, don't. Sorry, Aaron Jones. Don't bury Aaron Jones. I've got no interest in listening about.
It's the most boring storyline ever. Only Aaron Rodgers and Mrs. Aaron Rodgers care about that.
I bet he really, really loves it though. Anyway, we could do a whole other feature. That could be great, obviously, to talk about things we are sick of relating to Aaron Rodgers. But we'll wrap it up there, Ed. So they are our talking points then at the end of the season. I'm sure we'll revisit those at some point as well. Couple of little shows coming up for the next few weeks. We're going to look at some possible trade for and trade away options for us as we are now thick into our dynasty season of shows. And then we'll probably take a little break as we immerse ourselves in our rookie research ahead of free agency and the NFL draft. But Ed, anything you would like to add before we finish up?
3 games to go, Mark. 3 games to go.
Yeah, so enjoy the 2 games before we take a little break. 4, let's not forget the Pro Bowl games. They're very exciting too.
Oh, yes. I forgot about flag football.
On that note, let's leave it there. It's bada bing, bada bye. And Malcolm, take us home.
You have been listening to the team from TH Fantasy Football. For more content, follow TH_fantasy_NFL on Twitter and Instagram.